Welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. I am Sharon Constanson, Chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce here in the UK. And it's wonderful to have people joining us from South Africa, from the US, and from the UK, and from Europe. And our panel alone comes from 3 different continents. So it's wonderful to have so many of us here together. We've had such an amazing time putting this panel together and preparing for it and listening to some of these ladies' stories. It absolutely has been one of the more warming experiences for me, and is to learn what has been so special to these individuals and what's made them so special and who they are today. So why I am who I am. And they're going to share with us today the why as to who they are. If you look at the opportunity today to have something a little bit more lighthearted, it's National Women's Month in South Africa, National Women's Day yesterday. People had the opportunity to have some fries in the garden and not have to actually be at work, which would be lovely. So it is a more lighthearted evening, one that I hope you've all got a glass of wine and that you're relaxing and for a moment, forget about the stresses that we've had that COVID have brought us, that the riots in South Africa recently have brought us, and the stresses on our economy and on our fiscal, and all of those things that we are all working together to do our best to try and improve. So thanks very much to all of you for attending. But one of the things that was really interesting, one of the words that came up that was so pertinent in the working with the ladies before we came to this final stage we're at now, is the word resilience. These ladies are absolutely resilient. And I think that is probably something that is a very pertinent quality to South Africans in all ways. Doesn't matter how difficult life gets, how far the chips are down, South Africans will be resilient and will cope and will manage. And it is so heartwarming to see how South Africa does cope in all aspects of adversity. Just a moment to share a few words with you in advance of introducing the first ladies. Each of the ladies will give a 5-minute talk, and then there'll be some question and conversation with each of them so you can get to know them a little bit. As an ode to women, thank you to our DNA. Women care. We say the right thing to make people smile. Women genuinely want to know how you are and care for your well-being. Women are innovative and find better ways to reach an outcome. Women are solution-driven. There's no such thing as an insurmountable problem. Women simplify complexity by dealing with the component parts. Women are multitaskers. Women find the knowns within the uncertainty to advance and make progress. Women are to be revered for their intrinsic abilities. Women, you are special. So to Happy Women's Month, now that Women's Day is over, I would like to thank you all for being with us and for sharing Women's Day with us. I asked all the ladies to tell me what are the 3 pillars on which they are the why I am who I am. And they've given us 3 pillars each, which they're going to talk to. And I pulled out key words out of there. The word resilient I spoke about a moment ago. Very poignant references to husbands, to fathers, to mothers, to children, to clients, but also to the opportunities life has given them and what they've done with those opportunities, and genuine hard work, resilience, and that's the one that came out very, very often, was being open to opportunity and being resilient in all aspects of their lives. The first speaker I'd like to introduce is Kath Kutzer. Kath is situated in Atlanta at the moment, so it's early morning. Well, it's not so early anymore, but it's during the day for her. And Kath is Global Vice President and Marketing and Public Affairs, Communications, Sustainability and Services Executive at Coca-Cola and Vice President for the South African Chamber of Commerce in the US. So she has had a marketing career. She's upped her family and moved around the world with Coca-Cola. It's an extremely powerful executive career and a like-minded, opposite to me, on the other side of the pond, as we say here, that I could spend time brainstorming with, sharing ideas, looking at how we're going to do things together between the two chambers. So Kath, can I leave it over to you to tell us why you are who you are?
Thank you, Sharon, and what a lovely opportunity to be with our sister chamber, if you will, of folk in the UK. So good evening to you all. Really looking forward to spending time with you and learning from the wonderful panelists that I have the privilege to join tonight. As Sharon provoked with each one of us to reflect on this question of who I am and why I am, I wanted to start with the following, which is just in the current context of everything that's happening around the world, and in particular the pandemic, was just a very strong appreciation for the fact that we can all be together tonight. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and no doubt many of you have had to deal with the pandemic in very personal ways. So I wanted to start there just saying I am just so grateful to be alive and to be healthy and to be able to be with you guys and girls tonight. In terms of the 3 principles or life lessons that have informed why I am and who I am, I think they really boil down to the following 3, which is 1, I live my life with arms wide open. And I say this at least once a week, if not more than once a week. And it comes down to the following, which is I have learned never to say no to an opportunity. I have learned that very often we women wait till we're ready before we jump in. And so now in hindsight, I try to say yes to everything. I try to figure out once I've said yes, how I'm going to be successful, and more importantly, how I'm going to learn from the magnificent men and women around me and how I can use their insights for success in the opportunities that I've already said yes to, irrespective of how ready I do or don't feel I am. That's played out in my career. As Sharon said, I have a wonderful opportunity to work with an amazing company like Coca-Cola, and have lived and worked in a couple of geographies, incredible roles, incredible people, just incredible talent. So living my life with arms wide open, saying yes to everything that comes my way to the largest extent possible. The second principle is I believe I may not get to decide what happens to me all the time, but I can absolutely decide how I'm going to let it shape me. And this comes from a very personal experience some years ago. I was married before, and I had the incredible privilege of having my first husband pass away in my arms. And I can imagine you're all going, well, why would that be a privilege? And I'll tell you why. Because in that moment, my entire true north shifted, and I fully appreciated for the first time in my life just how fragile, if you will, life is, and that it's not a rehearsal, it's a one-time deal. And as I came out of that experience, as horrible as it was, and it had been a several-week process, I made a conscious decision to go, well, this is what's happened. I now decide what happens to me and how I live with this going forward. And so what flows from that is immense appreciation for my family. I'm very happily married again. I have 3 amazing children, and I invest a lot of time making sure that they know how much I love and appreciate them. I try to share as much as possible from that experience, because I think death is something we grapple with all day, every day. And I try to debunk this notion that once something like that's happened to you, it's over. It is absolutely not over. It may be in very many ways, it may just be the beginning. And so this notion of I get to decide how things shape me is a very strong and true north for me. The last principle is I believe I am and absolutely should be a lifelong student. And in turn, where I have the opportunity and privilege, it is my obligation to teach and share my knowledge with others. I spent 10 years before I joined the corporate world in tertiary education. I've served on school boards, and I have a very strong passion and conviction that great education equals a great outcome for communities and for countries, and of course the world at large. And so I try to come at the world every day through the lens of what did I learn today that I didn't know this morning. I try to encourage the teams that I work with to show up with a learning spirit every day. And if you adopt that learning spirit and the attitude that everybody around you is someone that has something to offer, someone that has something to teach, you're just going to have an incredible, rich experience as you travel through the business of life every single day. So those would be my 3 principles: living my life with arms wide open. I get to decide how the stuff that happens to me shapes me. And very importantly, I am and will always be a lifelong student. So that, Sharon, I think in a nutshell is how I would describe the time that I've been privileged to have.
Amazing, Kath. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and especially sort of the shock of your sort of first statement. Oh, that was your second one where you were talking about your first husband's death. Looking at some of the things you've done, you've traveled the world, you've taken families with you, and you've gone to different continents. None of us have our lives have turned out as perfect as we want them to. If you look back on those things that have been done upon you, the way your life and your experiences have been, what would you do differently, if anything?
I really wished that I had appreciated far younger in my life the power of community and the power of networking. You know, I've had, apart from my first husband that I referenced pass away, I've had a couple of other significant events happen in my life. I lost a child. And I think in those moments, you realize that when you can't carry yourself, the people around you carry you. So this notion of community, this notion of networking, I wish I'd appreciated that earlier, not only for my professional career, but just in my personal space. And I wish in turn that I had showed up with that in service of others. And so if anything, that would probably be the one thing that I would have leaned into earlier in my life, had I been as conscious as I am now to that and the power of that.
Well, that's very, very powerful. Kath, thank you. You actually bring a bit of a lump to my throat that I'm trying to manage here. Next speaker I would like to bring and introduce is Annabelle Wundler. Annabelle, at a very young age, rose through the ranks of the Air Force, South African Air Force, to become a chosen pilot for President Nelson Mandela when he was traveling around the world and around the globe. And she's broken many barriers, as you can imagine, as a pilot, as a female pilot, and as the president's pilot and being a VIP pilot for the military. After a distinguished career flying the VIP transport squadron of the SA Air Force, Annabelle is now, in addition, flying an Airbus A320 for South African Airways. Those are big bloody machines. They are huge. I've actually been on one of those new planes that the South African Airways have got. Annabelle, you've had an amazing career. Can you please share with us why you are who you are?
Thank you so much, Sharon. I think, listening to Kath, what an inspiration. My three pillars that I can take from my whole life experience, I would start off with hard work. I've had to work extremely hard to get where I was, coming from the small town of Mafeking and not being exposed to aviation and seeing an airplane for the first time at the age of 7. And I asked my mom, who are those women? And they looked so elegant. And I just fell in love with that. But then I saw these men behind these women. And I said, well, what do they do? And my mom just said, well, they fly the airplane. And I said, well, that's what I want to do. And since that time, I've just persevered and made sure that this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it the right way, of course. And it was just such an opportunity when the Air Force came to my school and gave me that opportunity. And trust me, it was so much work because I was the only woman of color at the time that was going through pilot's course. I didn't know too much of that, but I just wanted to finish the course. And you can imagine 5 years after democracy, being in Langebaanweg, in the Western Cape, and people like me don't exist there. And so that was quite a lot of upheaval. But I'm so blessed that, through resilience, perseverance, hard work, that has been one of my mottos. And my second motto and what I live by is by my truth. I think it's so important for me through every single experience in life not to fall short of living by my truth. It is so important that I don't compromise, and I have this constant check. That is that the right thing that I have done. And also I think maybe it's because coming from the military background, you constantly question yourself. But it has to be the right thing. It has to be done properly. And throughout my whole experience in my career, pain has been one of the factors that has molded who I am. from my career to losing my mom last year. And as Kath was saying, she was in with her husband when he had passed away. Having my mom, also in my arms, and my mom passing away in my arms in hospital and being my pillar has changed my whole perspective on life, because I actually realized, well, I realized it before, but I realize it now that, you're here today and you're gone tomorrow. And it's the memories that you leave behind that's what matters, right? And it has also just brought me closer to my faith in my Christianity, and it has just changed my whole perspective on everything. I cherish a lot more. I live for a lot more of the simple things in life. And I am so blessed to still be part of the flying fraternity. So I'm still back at SAA now. And I'm also still part-time at the Presidential Squadron at the Air Force. So I'm doing both of them at the same time. And I'm unfortunately the only woman still at the Air Force, but we're trying to get more women into it. But I tell you, the only thing you can have in your career is you can have a good rapport about your credibility and your integrity, and that's what follows you around. And it's so important for me to always have those pillars. As I said, hard work, my truth, and my pain is basically what has made me.
The emotion that you guys bring to your day and sharing with us is quite poignant. So thanks very much. And the thing that crossed my mind as you were speaking is, how do you balance something that is commercial, flying, demanding with the timetable and all the personal demands and the physical demands on your life, with a presidential flying transport responsibility that you have that must clash sometimes, and emotionally and physically demanding wise? How do you manage?
I think this is where my truth is. I stay focused on what I have to do. But, Annabelle in the Air Force is the same Annabelle in the commercial sector. So I don't change. I've become very pedantic about managing my time and balancing it all out. And I have such an amazing supportive family, which makes it a little bit easier. So, I am still figuring it out, as most women are. But every day is an absolute adventure for me. So I'm absolutely loving it.
Fantastic. And it must be lovely to be back in the air with the
Yes.
airways as well. It must be lovely. I think maybe those of us who've been sitting at home, have had enough of home, all want to get back to the office, in your office.
Oh, yes.
I must admit, if I had to have my life again, I'd go fly aeroplanes and I would come join your
Please
team.
do. Please do.
I love fast cars and I'll make sure I enjoy them as much as I can. I would love to have learned to fly. It's just one of those things that if I look back, what is my regret? That happens to be one of them that you've just brought to mind. Thanks so much, Annabelle. We've talked now to Carmen Stevens, an award-winning Black female winemaker. And if we think of those words together, it's not often you see those words all put together. We've got a couple of really glass ceilings being struck by all the women here today. If I think back on my history as a English-speaking blonde woman in a very male patriarchal banking environment where they all spoke Afrikaans, the struggles that some of the girls are going through today. Ours was smaller. It's much worse today, but and I think if I look at, I had an example the other day where I went into HSBC Bank a little while ago, and two of us walked in. The man got the full overdraft that he asked for and got the all sorts of accoutrements and an extra label to his account and all this stuff. And I, who earned much more, much wealthier, had much better assets than this gentleman who was with me, I get the basic account and no overdraft. And this is recently, and you sit there and think, in the UK, it's not even in South Africa or Africa. And you think, these things, some of these things just haven't changed. So yeah, we still fight some of these things still. Carmen, Carmen's winery is Amani in Stellenbosch. You must look at her wine cellar, the winery itself. It's actually beautiful. I've only seen it through the Zoom camera, but it does look lovely. Wine gave her the wings in her creative streak and has made her the first in many, many fields of expertise. And inspired by her own roots, she created the Carmen Stevens Foundation, having been brought up in a township kind of environment where there were a lot of gangs and lots that you didn't have, one of them being food. She spent a lot of time ensuring that children who need to be educated have at least been fed so that they can be educated, which removes a lot of the social negatives as a result of children being fed, because then they become educated and then they understand that education is stronger than some of the other things. Carmen has shared some of these pleasures with us and understandings with us in a previous event. Carmen, can you share with us why you are who you are?
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you. What an amazing platform to share with amazing women. I feel indeed very privileged to be part of the panel. Thank you for inviting me. Sharon, I just have one correction. My wine cellar is named Carmen Stevens Winery. Amani is a company that I worked for before, which gave me an immense opportunity to be the person and help me grow into who I am today.
Apologies for that. My research wasn't very good.
So my motto, and I only realized this much later in my life. When I started looking back over my life, I realized that my motto was no is not an option. And I teach that to my own children as well. As you said earlier, I qualified as South Africa's first Black winemaker in 1995 after 3 attempts to get into the university or the college to accept me to study winemaking. And I always say to people that it's not because I was the first to have this amazing idea to become a winemaker, but it's because the previous regime chose who could study what in South Africa in the 90s. I matriculated in 1990 and only got to study winemaking, start studying winemaking in 1993. So after I qualified, after encountering quite a lot of different type of personalities that I did not expect when I arrived at the college. I think I went there with, I didn't realize it's going to be only white South African big men that will be studying agriculture and being confronted with that. And I'm not making an excuse for them with that mindset of you don't belong or this is not for you. You are taking the position of a potential farmer. To get over that for me was a huge hurdle. And if I look back now, that's why I say my motto, which I never knew before, is no is not an option. So I never accepted that I cannot be at the college. I never accepted that people can push me around and say that you don't belong. I never accepted when I came into the industry and people tried to basically work me to a point where I gave up. I just said, I'm here to say this is the only option I have, only opportunity, and I must grab that opportunity to the full extent. My mother was a factory worker, and after my parents got divorced, one thing that she instilled in us as girls was that you need to be self-reliant. You need to get yourself in a position where you can make your own choices and you can determine your destiny. And I would forever be grateful for that advice and that path that my mother has put both me and my sister on. Then my other motto is that creativity, and I think that is where wine comes in. Wine is such an amazing product. A glass of wine can tell you so much, not just about the country where it's grown in or the soil or the grape variety. It tells you the personality of the winemaker. It tells you so much of who that winemaker is in terms of not just his personality, but how he works with grapes. So it's such a beautiful product that tells a story. And if you listen and listen carefully, it will tell you so much more. And that creativity has helped me to bring opportunity to children through the fact that my winemaking has put me in a position where I have a platform and I can raise funds and I can make food possible for learners at school to give them the opportunity to focus, to get good results, and to make school a safe haven for children. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I always speak to my children about having gratitude, and that is one of the biggest gratitudes that I always say to my children, my family. My gratitude is that I can create opportunity for other learners that can come out of their impoverished environment where I was and make a beautiful life, a prosperous life for them, because that is where financial freedom comes in. And that is, I think, what I would like for my people, my children, and the children that I feed every day. I want financial freedom for them, that they can make choices, they can study what they want, they can have the opportunity to choose what they want to eat and travel and experience the world in its fullest. Thank you.
Very, very moving. Thank you very, very much. And it's amazing how it goes from your mum to wine to children. And it really is so much. Wine and children are so interwoven into your life. Quite incredible to see. Now, there's one photograph on your website where you're literally lying on the ground under the grapes and looking at a bunch of grapes, and obviously doing what winemakers do, or what people do as a farmer of vineyards. And the words came to me of, how do you make yourself visible when the world wishes you to be invisible? Just following on your college experience, and I'm sure your wine globally experience, how do you make yourself visible without looking like you are an opportunist or bragging, or all the negative connotations that you often see attached to women who are trying to make an effort?
I think it comes down again to being creative. If you are creative, if you create something that is so unique and so special, and that talks of the soil, of your environment, of your location, nobody can take that away from you. That is unique and authentic. And I think I always say to people that taste my wine, each bottle of wine that you drink or that you receive from our cellar has probably 50 to 60% of my fingerprint on it. Being authentic in that, and being authentic in what I want to display to, in terms of my wine, and to the world. I've always maintained that that I won't be marketed as a Black winemaker, but I would be marketed as a winemaker that brings creativity to the table. And through that, I can do and achieve lots more than just being a woman and Black and a winemaker.
Horrible to be labeled, and I love the referencing to authenticity instead of the labels that people put on you. But it's amazing how people respond to labels, that they recognize them, and then with that comes the bias that those labels bring, positive or negative.
You're right. Sharon, you're right. But you know, the new generation, the younger generation, there was a stage in South Africa that we called the professional Black young people, Black diamonds, and it was about brands, about, you know, being seen, being noticed. The new professionals that's Black talks about being conscious about your surrounding, being conscious about who you support, being authentic in what you put out. And I think that is going to change our world only for the better.
That's wonderful. There's something I want to talk about later, so I'm going to pick up on that comment in a moment. Let's get on to our next panelist, Nikki Scott, a lady who has a very unusual career, so different from the ones we've heard, a pioneer and trailblazer defining new frontiers in the field of transport and logistics. An experienced serial entrepreneur, she boasts 6 awards, an MBA, and is a mentor for Cheri Blair Foundation. She's a lady who has excelled in the industry of transport and transport throughout Africa, and is now has converted her career somewhat into more the education side to educate drivers, including female drivers throughout the globe. So she can tell us a little bit about that at the end, but let's look at your pillars, please. Why you are who you are.
So thank you so much, Sharon. Robin Sharma tells this wonderful story of personal mastery, and it goes something like this. Picasso is walking in the marketplace one day, and a woman walks up to him and says, "Oh, Picasso, I'm so glad to see you. I'm a fan of your work. Please, won't you draw me something?" And Picasso takes out a pen and paper and he draws her something and he hands it to her, and she looks at it and she goes, "Magnifique, thank you, Mr. Picasso." And she turns to walk away. And Picasso says, "My dear lady, that'll be $1 million. And the lady turns around and said, "But Picasso, that only took you 30 seconds to draw." And he says, "My dear lady, it took me 30 years to draw that in 30 seconds. And I think that that story gives me such goosebumps. I mean, I am no Picasso, but just like the courageous co-speakers of this evening that have shown resilience and overcome insurmountable challenges and enjoyed outrageous opportunities, we all probably have one thing in common, is that we stayed in the ring a lot longer than what people thought we would. And we sharpened our craft and our talents. And I think that's what makes women that are successful so different. Every one of the stories seems to come from adversity. I too came from little to nothing and didn't have parents with social equity. But I took on one of the toughest industries at the age of 22, which was the transportation of new commercial trucks and buses. So as they came off the assembly line, it was my job to integrate into those truck manufacturers and get those vehicles from the assembly facilities, which were mainly based on the coastal regions, all the way up through Africa, as far up as Rwanda and Uganda. And those 26 years that I owned and led that business were not easy. I developed an enormous amount of grit and resilience. But my dad always taught me this lesson, that you're never planted in the wrong place. And that if you open your eyes and you look, you will find the reasons and you will find the value that you can put into your toolbox to take you to the next level. Like I said, I was only 22 when I started, and I brought a service offering to the industry that had never been offered before, and that actually resulted in exponential growth. Now, for a banker, that's not a good thing, but for me, that was flippin' exciting. I mean, 5 branches, 200 drivers, and the corporates ignored me until they couldn't. And within 10 years of opening my business, I had 70% of the market share, and we were doing fantastically. But me being a market leader meant that you had to continually innovate. I was always playing defense. I was the only female, and I was certainly the youngest. But it was actually the men that drove me my hardest. I mean, their continual doubt. I remember I'd won my 6th business award, and it was the top CEO award for aviation and transport. And I was up against some really big companies. And one of my male clients turned around and said, "Nikki, there were no other women to give it to. So, don't even pat yourself on the back anymore." And I was like, "You're not going to take this away from me. This was my moment, and I'm going to live it." And I think that, I could not have got through those years without my husband. He was my champion. He talked me off the edge when I wanted to give up. And in 2018, I eventually, at his persistence, sold my company. I was very ill. I had cancer. I still have cancer. I can't move it. And I know that cancer should be such a terrible thing, but it softened me. It made me wiser. It made me more aware of my surroundings. It has made me a better person, and it has made me a stronger leader today for my new company. But I thank him every day for getting me through that and getting me through those 26 years. And the other thing that the entity that really shaped me was my customers. They taught me how to rise through adversity. Life wasn't easy, but there isn't a day that I don't miss my business and the customers that I got to experience it with. And I'm really just so grateful for the opportunities. And what I'd like to say to the woman out there, and you've heard it from the other speakers, is never accept no. Let that be something that pushes you forward and drives you to connect. And really, really develop that network, because it is your net wealth. But more than that, they're going to be there when you need them most, in business and in personal life. And that's my story.
Goodness, another one. It's amazing how many challenges us women have been through. And I listen to these stories, and I know the last one is going to show some equal challenges that life has given us. And I'm sure it's not only women that get challenges, but when you get an opportunity of putting it all together, it is actually quite profound. Question I wanted to ask you, your company obviously still exists. Somebody else must be running it, and there must be lots of vehicles needing still to be transported around. Is there a role in that world for female drivers, or now that you are not quite in the same space, I know you're in a related space, what are the opportunities for women to get these driving jobs at a commercial level, commercial driving?
So currently there is an enormous opportunity for women to enter the sector, not long haul, because we don't have truck stops for women and there aren't adequate bathroom facilities. And I mean, our national highways are not safe. Not even for men, I want to say that, but for women, I wouldn't put them on long haul, definitely local. South Africa has about 16,000 jobs available right now in the trucking industry, and most of those are for truck drivers. The USA, Carmen, Kath are busy headhunting our truck drivers and picking them off. So there is an opportunity for female truck drivers, and unlike in the past, where a truck driver had to be physically strong and robust, that's not the case anymore. This new technology has made it totally possible for women to be brilliant truck drivers, and all the data stacks up that women make fantastic drivers from every level, from customer service through to bottom line savings. So I would say what we need is a couple more corporates to get on board. And in fact, Coca-Cola was one of my customers in South Africa to develop female owner drivers. So definitely female truck drivers are a must. We have 1% female truck driver population in South Africa. The USA has 8%, Australia has 20%. There is no reason why we're trailing behind.
There we go. There's no need for unemployment, is there?
No.
We need a few more people like you to create the employment. But there's an example where 16,000 jobs would immediately make a difference to how many communities. I'd like to now move on to Nene. Nene Molefe is an interesting character. This is her book. This is how I got to know about Nene, is because of her book, which I have on my desk and I pick it up regularly. And I picked it up today, and you can see I've made a marker. I will be asking you about something in your book in a moment, Nene. But in the meantime, she's a sought-after speaker for conferences around the world on diversity, inclusion, unconscious bias, values-driven leadership and transformation. She's a member of a number of organizations that are diversity related. She's written books that are in that space. and she is an associate lecturer as well in terms of her capabilities. I'm not going to read them all out. I do apologize, Nene, but they are on the website. What I would like to know is, when I read the book, and I wonder, where did this degree of profound knowledge come from? And some of the tips that you share with us. So please tell us, how did Nene become who she is today?
Thanks, Sharon, and thank you to everyone on the platform. I would like to start by also
Can you speak up a little bit, Nene?
Oh, okay. Is it the volume? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I were to reflect on the three pillars, like my previous speakers have done, how I've got to be who I am. The first one, having grown up being a caregiver to my siblings at 16 years old, because my mom died at 16, and same year my dad left to stay with another family. So, when people talk about child-headed families, I know exactly. And, so for me, I've held to three things which I practice. Knowing what is my anchor, what anchors me in life. So the practice that I really, over the years, is meditation, prayer, and journaling. Because I would work so hard. I work with big corporates around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sometimes you are emotionally drained. So what has really helped me is that I constantly practice that prayer. And I heard when Annabelle was also talking about her faith, and I think others, it's so important to know where to go to. That has been my anchor. And having what I call a heart keeper. Having in life that person that when you don't know what to do, when you feel so depleted, you can just open up to them with your vulnerability. That I found very important. The second pillar I want to talk to for me is what I call inclusive parenting. I have been a single parent for a while. Let me talk in case there are some single parents on the platform here, to say what I have learned important lessons. My son is at university now. When he was at high school, I remember a few women who I think were fortunate enough to be work from home women, not necessarily career women. And I know sometimes it's a choice. I remember some of them clearly, one would say, but Nini, we feel so sorry for your son. And I'll say, why? And they said, because you are always not here. You are flying all over the place. You are so busy. So the one, really, I did myself a favor to say women need to drop the guilt, right? Because I remember sitting down with my son saying, does it bother you that, and he says, Mom, I know you work hard, but I felt, it sort of was eating me, that comment that we feel sorry for your son. So what I did, you laugh at this, we developed a 5-point scale with my son, because I talk about inclusion. So I need to bring inclusion at home, a 5-point scale. And I said, if there's an activity at school that, you other parents are coming and all that, you can, if it's a 4 or a 5, where it's really important for me, just mark that this one is a 4 or 5. If it's not, it will be on the left. And the first few months, everything was 4.9, until we got used to it. And then he actually got used to say, Mom, this is a 2. You don't have to come. And, he actually enjoyed that I was involving him in that, because that's my life. And we were co-creating what will work. The second thing that we did, every end of the month, I do stretch plans or strategic plans around leading inclusively. So I do it in my house. Every end of the month, we have a family stretch plan where we say, in the last month, what is it that I did that impacted on you negatively? We tell each other, and all my kids. And as a parent, you need to be brave, because they'll give you a long list. You don't listen to me, I'm always on the phone, blah, blah, blah. But again, with time, it worked. That helped me so much through those meetings. I was able to also know when one of my nephews was being bullied at school, because again, I wouldn't have known. I felt that there are certain tips that we can use as career women that would help us to say, indeed, we are working at the same time we are parenting. And then the last pillar for me is passion for my work. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is my passion. And that's the work I fall and wake up on. And I think for me, I have to do ongoing personal development. I know it sounds like a cliche, but read a book a month. I read a book a month. And I don't read the whole book. I'll be lying. What you do, you page through, you look for areas that are helpful for you. And because all of us, we have a lot of books that are self-help, they end up being shelf-help. They help the shelf. So I try and ensure that how do I go through books that will be helpful for me? And I love Ernest Hemingway, who said, there is nothing noble in being superior to anyone. The greatest nobility is being superior to your former self. So I do ongoing personal development. How can I be a better Nini than last year? Not how can I be better than this one and look down upon other people, because that's what I see in the work that I do. That is not about me being superior. It's about me to be superior than what I was last year. And by so doing, it's excellence. I do my work and I can show up in such a way that I can also give to others what I have given to myself as well. The last point being the power of informal networks. I think it was Kath who mentioned that, the power of informal networks, because, you know, if there's that organogram, all of us, if you occupy that organogram at work, that box that I'm executive director so-and-so, below every box are 2 levels. 2 invisible levels. One is network of relationships. The other one is culture. You know, you can all be qualified, but one could accelerate her progress in an organization and one moves slower because of these informal networks that we don't think. We have to place a lot of value on forming networks. And for me, I've grown through networks, and I go out of my way and identify and name women who have actually made me who I am, and go anti the PhD, they pulled her down. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in those women who have really pulled other women up. I don't know if it's 5 minutes.
Fantastic story again, and I love your energy, Nene. It's a nice way to, out of the 5, just feel that energy and that emotion of yours. The story that I picked up your book, and I had, you took your moments about reading a book a month. I might read a story of yours a month, but I do get to open your book a number of times. And the one was 2 juxtaposition stories that you had in there. And the theme was you can't win every battle. And it was the story around the seminar that you went to go and deliver in Germany with 2 of your colleagues, both being white men, and where their conditions in terms of their visas and yours were so dramatically different, and how you shared that back. And the next story that's in the book is what it's like visiting family and friends in Soweto who are inexperienced in the world that you live in.
Yeah.
Please, can you just share the meat behind those 2 stories? Because I just found them in the same place, right next to one another.
Yeah.
Completely interesting.
Yes, the one story, we went to Hamburg in Germany. I was facilitating a global diversity workshop with 2 of my colleagues. We were all associate lecturers. I'm with 2 of my colleagues, both white males. I'm the only one who was a black woman. But we are sent there by the same company, HR. They applied for visas and everything. And we get there, and, you know, we all had about 5 days to present our parts of modules. And on the last day, I was the last one to present. I look at my watch. After I present, people were asking questions, so it was taking long. I'm packing quickly. So my colleague says, his name is Carl. He says, "But Nini, why are you in a hurry?" I said, "I have to run to the airport to look at the time because, I have to run now." And they say, "Why?" So I said, "What do you mean? How many days were you given in your visa?" And he looks at me. He says, I said, "Because mine expires now this evening. So hence I need to be out of here." And I look at him and he says, the way he smiles, I said, "Can you show me your passport? I mean, we're friends and all that." And then I go to the other colleague and I said, "How long were you given for?" They were both given 1 full year. I was given 6 days. And the work that I deal with, which is called microaggressions, micro-iniquities, unfairness, I live that every day. So I said, what? And they were so embarrassed. I said, well, it's not you who did that. But the fact that the three of us did exactly the same application, exactly the same thing, and the unfairness is there. So when I say you can't also fight every battle, you'll be a lunatic if you fight things that happen around you every day. You'll really be a lunatic. You have to choose your battles, and when you choose them, fight them well. You know, and sometimes you say, this one, I'm not going to fight. I'm going to leave it like this because otherwise it affects you. And then the next story in Soweto is that, you know, I grew up, of course, with my friends and all that. I was fortunate enough, even through those difficulties, an aunt of mine took me to university. So I have degree and degree and degree. Some of them who don't. When I go back home, they, you know, some of the stories, and I said, because I deal with diversity, they say, you live in the suburbs, you know, even some of these things that you talk about, you don't know real life. And I say, you don't understand. So when I say we all have to do work, we have to do work with regards to the way white people see black people, vice versa, the way black people see white people, men, women, everyone has to do work in this. Because just from the life that I'm in, I could see that these are my friends. I love them to bits, but they call me, you know, they would say that's because I live somewhere in the suburbs. But I think all of us need to fold our sleeves to say, how do we co-create an inclusive country? And we can, an inclusive world as well.
The question that's come up on the Q&A, and please, there's lots of opportunity. We've got a few more minutes. If anybody else would like to plant any additional questions to what we have. Question by Kath's colleague, Neil Diamond, and not the singer who I'm absolutely passionate about his music. Neil Diamond's also part of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the US. And he was making comments as to, from the other speakers, and Annabelle, I know you would like to answer this one, is what has been the value of your community and your network, either in particular in those that have been outside the country or when you're outside the country, but also from within the country? How would you value your network that you and your community around you? Annabelle, would you like to pop up first and bypass your writing and tell it and share with us?
I'm surprised you saw that writing. You know, it's so important to me, especially in this aviation sector, and there's so many kids that want to be involved in aviation. And so it's been so important to go to these desolate areas where children are sitting under trees and, you know, wearing my uniform, but it's not only me that's sitting in aviation. There's engineers, there's air traffic controllers, there's ground staff, there's so many different careers in aviation. And you go there to these schools or to these open areas, and these children see people that kind of look like them, and there's opportunity for them. And so this is what we've been doing for, oh my God, I've been in aviation for 22 years. And it's speaking and preaching to these children that, you know what, you can also do this. And so this has been at the forefront of my career, is just going into these schools and preaching aviation to these children in the community.
Lovely. Any of the others want to talk about the influence of community and networks? I have got another question. And Carmen, would you like to respond?
Yes, I think what Annabelle just said, you know, it's so important for Black kids to be able to see there is somebody that has achieved something. And I have experienced this with my own schools where I'm feeding, is when I tell people that I come from that community, suddenly they realize, you know, that if I can do this, they can do this. And that is such a powerful thing to share with a child. You know, you don't have to be in a top school. You just need to do your work. You need to pay attention, you need to focus, and you can also achieve that. And in the platform of network, or the network that I have, is I speak specifically about the network of people that buys my wines in the UK, that makes it possible for me to give opportunity of food to children. That for me is priceless. I don't have that type of network in South Africa, but it's not because I think it doesn't people don't want to get involved. It's just that I first came into my own as a winemaker and having my own product in the UK, and that is where a lot of my support comes from for the children. But what astonished me even more is that people, when I started this program of helping children with food in 2011, it started very small. It started with a minimum of 300 kids. We are now on over 25,000 kids. And that impact that people from another country can make in my country, in my community, that is priceless. It's amazing.
We'll come back in a moment if you've got something like that. I just want to ask one last question of the crowd before we are going to run out of time. So if you'd all like to come with your cameras back on, please, and you can turn your mics off as well. One of the things you see, and I've seen it a little bit in the UK environment, we've seen it in probably every community that exists, is the woman who makes it up to the top and does everything she can to make sure that nobody else is going to get in her space, male or female. And you come across it, and I see it in the boardrooms, I see it in all sorts of places, and in most cases, it is the microaggression that Carmen was talking about, and that I think, Nene, you were talking about. It's so subtle, but it's such emotional bullying that does occur. Now, I don't sense that in any of the women we hear, so I'm in very safe territory to ask you whether you've experienced it, what you think about it, what can we do about it? How do we get authentic women leaders who are going to be always the role model for other women? And just, I think, work with hands up so that we don't get everyone. Okay, Kath, you can go first.
I'll just jump in and say, I've observed that a lot in over 20 years of working, and I think that's true for most people. I do think it's a commitment to two principles. One is you are obliged to lift as you climb, and one of our wonderful speakers referenced that principle earlier. And the second one, quite simply, and I love the colloquial nature of this one, is real queens fix each other's crowns, and they don't tell everybody else while they're doing it. And so if you lean into those two notions, then there is nothing that we can't do together.
Wonderful, Kath, thank you. Nene?
Yes, just to definitely build on what Kath has said, and also to say, as women, can we protect each other with the truth? I often said, look for a circle of women that will be able to tell you the truth. By protecting me with the truth is that you are telling me true, because some of the women who have climbed up, they think that in order for you to be, to be taken seriously, you need to be banging the table and doing that. And I think the more we just talk about that, you can be a feminine, you can be a firm leader. You don't have to have delegated sexism now. Now you are the one who's looking down upon other women. So I think if we just are open about giving each other feedback in a caring way.
I think one of the words used by one of you earlier was authenticity, to actually be yourself. And by being yourself and caring for others, whether it be children or whether it be other women in the system, naturally brings out what I was talking about in our DNA of women. But we do see other aspects. Annabelle, you wanted to say? I'm not sure if you had your hand up.
No, I didn't, but
okay.
I'll just contribute a little bit. I mean, I faced it quite a lot in our aviation career because we're such few women. But what I think growing in this career for so long, I'm so comfortable in my skin, and so I'm not threatened by other women. And so it's important for me to be able to relay information, to help where I can. And I think, I can change what I do, but I can't change what other people do. And so I'm very comfortable in that space. And so whatever else other people are feeling, then, that's absolutely got nothing to do with me. But it's important to continue, as you said, to fix each other's crowns.
I think that's a lovely way of describing it. Nikki, anything you'd like to say?
An example recently, I put 10 female truck drivers into a workplace, and they were the first. And one of them lodged a sexual harassment case, and it was legitimate. the other 9 women turned on her and basically blamed her for being overly friendly and smiling too much and sitting on the laps of some of the guys. And I was flabbergasted that even at the most basic level, and they were so new to this career that they couldn't support one another. In fact, 2 of the ladies actually testified against their female colleagues. So I think you're going to see it right through organizations. Women see a lot of women, depending on how they enter the industry, and a lot has to do with the organizational culture of the companies that they're working for. They start to change who they are to fit a mold and to fit an environment, and in a belief that they will thrive in that environment. But all I can say is that it sometimes takes hindsight to realize that you need to be true to yourself. And rise that way.
I look at examples in the boardroom where you end up with a female chairman, female CEO, or female non-executive director, who will actually, in all cases, either verbally, openly bully people, or do the sort of verbal body language, or the body language of and raising their eyes to the ceiling and sort of turning off their camera because they don't like, and all the things that disempowers the women around them, or where they're actually absolute bullies. And because they are women, they get away with it for probably a lot longer than a man might if they were as equally bullied, because that can be often. I've seen it in the corporate world at the boardroom level. So it exists everywhere. We see it as kids in the playground. Ladies, we could talk all day. And however much I would love to, I think I will go past what is my personal motto of we never run late. And we've run a couple of moments late. All I'd like to just make aware to all of you, and I'm just looking for a link that I'm going to post here. Stuart, can you post the link quickly? We have our Ubuntu Commendation Awards in 6-7 weeks' time. We usually do awards in different business categories. But because of the lockdown environment at the moment, we are just commending people for what they've done. Last year was for saving lives, for stepping up into their communities, and for bringing humanity to the COVID situation. This year, what we're doing is innovation in the environment of either business or personal. I mean, whatever aspect, people are bringing innovation of saving lives. And also the sort of, if you look at what went on in South Africa in early July, the innovation of communities and people and leaders in those environments to actually say this is not acceptable. Now, whether it's innovation there in the community level, innovation of a large corporate finding their way of re-innovating their company because they can't get their food to their individuals, they have to now go onto online provision and servicing of their customers, which they've never had to do before. We're all used to it here in the UK. So where is the innovation? So at the moment, it's not popping up. What we'll do in the thank you letter that's going out to everybody, we'll give you the link. And I challenge every single one of you on here tonight to either nominate yourself, somebody else, male or female, or somebody's else or other companies, so that we have a robust selection of nominations to go out into our Ubuntu Awards, which is an open networking environment, a great fun evening where we all have our boerewors and our braai food and our South African wines, and we enjoy a very social evening at the same time as commending people who have survived and brought economic improvement to all of us in such difficult times of COVID. So I would like to thank you all at this point in time for everything that we have done. And to my panelists, not often 5 people in a row can stick a frog in my throat and make me want to cry, but you all achieved it. We have all come through amazing adversity, and look at the strength, the smile, the positivity, the can-do mentality, and you epitomize what South Africa is today, is we can and we will. So thank you all for being who you are. I'm very proud of all of you for sharing tonight with me today. Thanks very, very much. And to all our people who attended, Thank you very much for being with us. We had a good attendance this evening, and we've had attendance from what I can understand from at least 3 or 4 continents. Thank you very much to everybody. Good night.